Call this meeting to order.
Yeah.
Do you have to do any remote participation?
No, there's no one here yet. If Martha jumps on, then we will do we will read her in. The motion is ready.
And as far as the agenda, the one addition that you had emailed was to talk about AI.
Yeah, just wanted to kind of touch base with the committee on that because it's come up quite a bit in staff discussions as of late.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. So we had committed as a committee to meeting quarterly, starting I think last year, and had been doing pretty good, but then took a break because we didn't have a head of here. So I just wanted to have him introduce himself, talk a little bit about the stuff that he's inherited, and then we can talk about what's that enhancements.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jeremy Lundgren. I'm the new collections and technology manager here. As David was saying before we started, I worked at JMRL before from 2008 to 2013, like that. And I spent the gap between then and now working for Austin Public Library in their IT department. So yeah, the major projects that David mentioned that I inherited, I'm just going to go over some of the bigger hardware projects that were on my plate here. The biggest one is the implementation of the equipment that was purchased with last year's E-rate. So firewalls, switches, UPSs, 18 switches in total, spread out across all of our branches. UPSs spread out across each of our branches, a couple different form factors there, depending on the size of the racks in each of those locations. And wireless access points, that purchase just kind of went in progress the beginning of February. So I haven't heard anything about the shipping on that equipment yet, but 31 new indoor access points for all of our locations as well. Another big hardware purchase we have coming up, Biblioteca lockers, add-on units for the existing lockers at Crane and Louisa. I just heard from procurement today about that. They found a cooperative contract to be able to purchase that with, so I won't have to do the whole sole source process, so that we should be able to get that going this week too. Re-IPing our Ting circuit, we have 3 kind of network segments. Most of our branches are on a single one. The gateway IP address for that needs to change, and that has a lot of implications for vendors, databases, and things that use IP authentication. So that'll be but mostly a communication level project, having to interface with all of those people that rely on that IP as our authentication. So Kayla had a nice spreadsheet for that, so I have a list of everybody that I need to contact. I hope it's everybody I need to contact, but it's different levels of process depending on what they do for us. So we'll get that going. And Sierra Fine Free, as you mentioned, that I don't know what all the parts of that are going to be. It's going to be a big project within the but start to get a handle on that pretty soon. And then we've got equipment fund purchase requests starting to trickle in this week, so that'll be another sort of immediate thing we'll have to deal with, is purchasing this year's.
Enough?
Yep, that's what I
got. So the network hardware will potentially have some levels of disruption. I mean, it will take the network down at each branch that gets the new equipment, but I believe that right now the schedule that Jeremy and City IT are working on is not to disrupt any public service hours.
As minimal as possible. The only reason that I can think of that any public services would be disrupted is if something went wrong during the replacement of a switch. But the City IT has had those switches for a while. They're all configured. It's really just putting them in a rack and moving the cables from the old switch to the new switch. So even in the event of something not going right, the rollback is minutes really to get the old switch back up and running. So it shouldn't have zero impact as far as I know.
That's true. What could possibly? Okay, anything else to add on that?
Those are the things.
kind of
Obviously, we have other stuff we're working on, but those are the big hardware things.
Hanging out there. These lockers are starting to show their age. They're not that old, but bought most of them in 2021, I think. So 5 years, and just recently. Did you see the one in Louisa when the board was there?
I did not look at it.
Yeah, the screen broke, which is a very passive way of saying somebody smacked the screen too hard and it broke, and ends up being thousands of dollars to replace more than just the screen in order to get it working again. So I think there are going to be some ongoing costs there that we haven't had to factor in. We've had an annual maintenance for them, but we're starting to see things fail that are not included under that maintenance warranty.
The vendor called that outside the scope of normal use, which seems valid to me. Somebody broke it, but.
Okay, any questions for Jeremy about kind of welcome to JMRL and his experience or plans? Or Jeremy, for your background, and we've talked about this with this group as a board staff group, and got kind of the tech leads of JMRL here from the staff end, and the goal is to meet 4 times a year and work through the strategic plan goals. We talked a lot last year about trying to help advocate for resources too for JMRL, like it's just in technology. And this is an advisory group for the most part. This group will advise the full board on actions. But we'll share with the trustees a little preview of what you're going to hear at the full board meeting. Is that the proposed budgets that Charlottesville and Albemarle have sent to their elected officials included full funding for JMRL, except very specifically the funding for the part-time position to support Sarah, the web content specialist, and also the part-time position that would have been here at Northside, not a tech position, but another one. So basically they drew the line at no new positions. It's disappointing. My top priority and the board's top priority was overall compensation that all of our staff, including the ones working tech, will hopefully see if this budgeting all goes through. But it means we're going to have to figure out other ways to get Sarah extra help. And this is not anything that this committee has control over. Individual trustees have more control over it. This went through a process that there were a list of new jobs that were needed that went to the personnel committee that then prioritized them. And then those went to the budget committee, and only 2 made it out alive. And those made it into the board's budget, but then neither one of them made it through this round of regional budgeting. So.
Well, it's because AI is making everything so easy. Like, why would you need more people, right?
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
All right. So Peter, do you mind if I share something here? And I apologize for only having paper copies for you all today, but I'll share the PDF doc. If we're ready to move on. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Committee will recall that I have a goal that came from the full board last year to provide the board with a timeline on web improvements. I forget the exact wording of the goal, but I will look it up. So we've been working on this. Sarah and I were working on this before Jeremy came on board. Jeremy's been had his hands on it in the last few weeks. The goal here is to kind of show you where we are at this point, with the assumption that we'll have another technology committee meeting before the end of Q4. So before this is a deliverable for the full board, this is kind of where we are right now. Okay. And we've been talking about a couple different things. This committee has talked about in the past as well. Maybe. Yeah, jeez. Can we talk about how the laptop I was using at the board meeting died twice during that meeting?
Probably should have intervened there, but once the Windows updates were happening. There wasn't much I could.
Okay, so two things here. One is a kind of a web strategy roadmap for the timing for things that currently we know need to happen on a certain cycle. Like this is not written in stone at this point, but it's things that tie in with resources that we have and are using now. And then the second page is kind of an update on what all those web components are. Maybe we'll start with that, work our way backwards. So just so we're all using the same language about what these little pieces are. The first and maybe the either 1A or 1B is ViewFind and the Find It catalog. So this is the library's catalog that's offered to the public. And as we found when we turned on beta, the current website the summer before last, the most feedback that we got from the public was about use of the catalog. Because we also repointed everything that was pointing to the catalog away from the classic catalog, which still lives out there. It's that, and pointed it towards ViewFind, which we had been using for several years, but it wasn't kind of the default for everybody. So we got a lot of feedback immediately about that, and it struck me, how this is what a lot of people, this is their main interface. This is what they're looking for. Like, where's the catalog? Okay, so this is an open source software. It's actually Villanova University's overlay here with the view. Basically, currently, it's hosted on a server that we're paying, some amount a month, $140 a month for use of this server. It's not the only thing that's hosted there. We're not currently paying anything for that software. It is open source, and we have paid an independent contractor to help us do some work with that. And presumably that would continue moving forward because it's a big unwieldy piece of open source software, right? So one of the conversations that needs to happen in terms of this timeline, in terms of our strategic planning, in terms of what JMRL is going to do is what does the catalog need to look like basically for the public? And our options are unlimited. They're create our own thing, have AI create something for us. You continue to use ViewFind, find another open source software. Hire somebody to develop something specifically for JMRL, which I don't think would be our first choice, but or use the softwares that are being sold by our catalog vendor, which is something I'm interested in, but we're not there yet in terms of deciding how to move that forward.
I guess maybe I'm just thinking out loud. This is great. You mentioned those options, but I'm asking myself as you're talking, well, how well is this working for us right now? What would be the urgency or the opportunity? There's like, what's the need to change something, and then what would the opportunities be? Also, you can work either from need or from opportunity. So maybe sort of a grade, of like a red, yellow, green, or ABC. Sure. I don't know how we would, but that might be useful. Just to understand to help prioritize some of this.
And that might be answered a little bit when we look at the other chart too, because
Timing.
in terms of timing, because there are other things to think about.
Yep.
I think it's a good point in terms of prioritization, though, like what's most important. I mean, one of the biggest things about ViewFind that I have concerns about are stability. It's been pretty stable, but when it goes down, it goes down inevitably on like Friday evening or Saturday morning, right? Where people are trying to access it, but staff aren't available to troubleshoot it, So and Sarah does jump on there and fix what she can as she can, but I'd be interested in, like, for me, it's just my personality, basically, like that's one of the top priorities.
I mean, technically I'm scheduled Monday through Friday, but I mean, basically I'm on call 24/7 because if any of these things go down, I mean, I'm it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if it's our website versus another one, because we've had issues with these other tools too, that I've had to either reach out to their support or do this for myself. So
one of the reasons this one in my mind is on a little shakier ground is that there is no their support.
True when it's
open source community that was willing to help.
Yes. Yeah.
We've got Catherine Purdue who set it up for us. We know how to get in touch with her sometimes to try to help, but there is no like, let me put in a ticket with this group that works on this, or so as part of that prioritization, that's something we need to discuss. Okay, The Drupal is just the framework that we're using on our server that is hosting most of these functionalities. We'll get to the ones that are specifically different. It's the content management system using this current version of Drupal, which needs to be updated, correct?
Yeah, it's an outdated version of Drupal, and this is open source. There's a community for this to support stuff, but there's no one that I can call to fix
Here's a
Drupal.
ticket, fix this for us.
Yeah,
right?
there's no one for that.
It's, hey, this is broken. Does anybody know?
Yeah.
How to fix this, basically. That upcoming security upgrade is crucial. That has to be Sarah Elizabeth's focus for the next. That'll be in the timeline as well. But it's got to happen basically, or else some of our resources are going to stop working. I will say, I believe that we're very happy with the vendor hosting the overall server.
Yes,
there.
with the infrastructure
Yes.
of holding the server and stuff, they are very responsive. And in fact, they were responsive when we had some intense bot activity a couple weekends ago. I mean, of course, on a Saturday or Sunday. That was a Sunday morning.
Bots are awake.
That's when they're less likely to be stopped.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. That's right.
Yeah, it's timed on purpose. So I mean, yes, our host is great because I put in a ticket, said, hey, I need this activity blocked, and they said no problem, and here are some preventive measures put on. So they were great for that.
So I think even if later on we decide that we need to move from this CMS and that's not the answer, they're not a Drupal only shop, right? We're still happy with
Yes, they are. Yeah, they are hosting. They are working with us for hosting a lot of our stuff.
In terms of priorities, the Hours app matters more to us internally probably than most of it. It does run the schedule of what the open hour library, the website there.
It surfaces everywhere.
Yes.
Everywhere.
The data is used everywhere that pulls from this, so it's important. But this is not the calendar. This is the little, you click on it and it tells you Gordon Avenue is open from noon to 9 on Wednesday.
Is it equivalent to a WordPress plugin, that kind of thing?
It would be similar to that, to a Drupal module or WordPress plugin.
Yep.
I have not seen one to do as much as this does. This was custom built by my predecessor for this need, and she built it for another library. So it's a very useful, robust tool. And
the cost here is the same as the cost for the hosting. These are both hosted
Main is hosted.
Yeah. So this is not a separate cost for that Hours app. It's hosted. It's just the cost of what the host is, basically.
David, can I just interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
My mind has still been spiraling off with the earlier mention of not funding the position, and then if something goes wrong, person and being on call 24/7, and that just seems a bit crazy to me. And so I just feel like it doesn't happen now, but I think it would be worthwhile to sort of think through what are the ways to address that now that this position hasn't been funded. Are there other things that can be done to take a little pressure off to both from a not overly burdening you as one person, but also from a risk management perspective of not being so reliant on
absolutely.
And are there other ways, creative ways to deal with this situation?
Yeah, yes, there's a lot to talk about there. I think this position in particular, we weren't necessarily looking at as as the person that would be, because this is effectively, we're looking for a data entry position to pull that time away from Sarah, because it's sucking up a tremendous amount of her time right now. I don't know that position would then be if that person would then be in the position to Saturday morning at 6 a.m. fix something, like maybe in an ideal world, but
It would, I envision that at least that person could be familiar with the documentation about, I have a quick guide for how to do certain fixes for certain issues that would happen. Like if you're seeing this slow down, check this log report, and if so, put in a ticket about bot activity. Right now, that backup is this position.
Definitely
So,
some of that.
and that's what
infrastructure.
Kayla was my backup. So when I left for a week on vacation, Kayla did handle that stuff.
And
So-
maybe that's what we want. I mean, that's like a thing that we want baked into the position. Maybe it becomes a more compelling argument that's included in the. description.
Yeah, I don't, in the overall budgeting picture that JMRL was looking at, like, it had nothing to do with the,
Content. Okay.
with what the position was. It's a good point, but
It just turns into an ongoing cost with benefits and
Yes.
stuff. I mean, I also see the need for it, but I'm
yes.
just articulating what I imagine the
And
rationale.
also, each of these jurisdictions is facing similar needs in every other department that they are saying no to. So it kind of doesn't matter. And I shouldn't say that, like, they thought about it, we talked about it, they're very involved in this process. But in the end, they just decided to hold the line at new positions, basically across the board, except for like fire. And safety. So,
But it might be that just sort of internally, you guys could talk about, given that that's happened, are there some other things that could be done? And you could bring it back to this group or to the board or whatever, but just.
Training me is the number one thing
Yeah.
that needs to happen
Okay.
there. So, yeah. I'm totally available to, as much as Sarah is, to be her backup. I just don't know all of the bits and pieces as well as she does at this point.
Yeah, trust me, I was messaging him on the weekend.
welcome to JMRL.
And it does seem because it's so, it requires an intimate knowledge of the JMRL infrastructure. It's not something that can be outsourced in any reasonable way.
Yeah, I mean, I've documented what I could in the time, but I mean, it's like any position. There's certain institutional knowledge
Right.
built into doing it. So I'm not sure it would just take time to train someone.
With that point, though, if we talk about using a product that a vendor supports to offer these things, right, then we are outsourcing some of that. It doesn't guarantee that it's not going to go down on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. But instead of us figuring out what's the problem and how to fix it, it's engaging with this outside source that we're already paying to get them to fix it. Like, does that get it fixed faster?
But I mean, even when our ILS went down a couple times because data center issues and stuff like that, we still had to put in a ticket and we still had to report what we were experiencing as a problem. You still needed to have someone on our side to interface for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody needs to be responsible and understand what's happening.
To be able to communicate about it and to be able to respond to the ticket because, like the manager on duty at Central put in a ticket, but maybe didn't check back to see what the response was or the questions that they asked. And, someone has to be assigned to kind of be that representative. So
The other argument I'll probably make in the years to come about potentially moving to a vendor hosted solution, especially for the catalog, is the development for it. There are things that we have people asking us for now in Viewfind that we probably could do, but it would require somebody's, a good amount of their time to figure out, like, things that seem simple to the public. It's like the perfect example is my reading history, right? So in the classic catalog, there's a functionality, and the classic catalog is what comes out of the box with our Sierra innovative. It's our library management system that manages all of our patron and item records, our bibliographic records. In the old free version that came there that you can still access in the classic catalog, you can tell it, remember everything I've checked out. And people love that feature. But in the new catalog, it's not on. That Viewfind was written for academic libraries. Am I wrong?
to turn it on and off to record your checkout history is only available in Innovative, in Sierra, but it does surface in Find It. Well, so there are various features that are not turned on in the Find It discovery layer, and there are other discovery layer software packages made more for our type of libraries than public libraries and academic libraries and stuff. And Innovative has its own product too. Yes, our version of Viewfind is out of date. Our version of Viewfind doesn't have some features that it could have. It is, the more configurable you make something, the more it has to be configured. And that's what takes the skill set, and the time. Because there are some things that I could probably figure out, but I mean, it's takes some time. So.
Anyway, we don't have to make those decisions today. It's just like, these are the factors that we're talking about internally that, will go into what I think is one of the biggest things here is what's our next catalog. Okay, MRBS, it's the meeting room booking system. This is another open source software hosted on that same server. This we had when Jeremy left JMRL, still here. It works pretty great, I have to say, for a piece of open source software like this.
And I've upgraded it I've upgraded it to its latest level, and it's
secure. I remember when I was in Jeremy's job, the passwords were kept in a text file, not encrypted at all, that was hosted on a server somewhere. So it's being actively worked.
Yes.
Which is great. This is a little bit less public facing, but it's not entirely a staff tool. It is available for folks to look at. If you wanted to look at a meeting room at a branch, you can click on it and see what the schedule is. You can't then make an appointment from within MRBS, which I think is a functionality that we could enable if we wanted to.
We're not using all the features.
And also, every branch outside of their meeting room should have a printed version of the day's calendar that comes. This one, when we talk about Troomba in a little bit, most of the solutions that are on the market for these things combine those two. So briefly, we'll just mention the blog, which is hosted again on that same server, and is a WordPress blog that Sarah's done a good job of trying to make sure that the look and feel of it kind of is more aligned with our branding than it had been before. One of the strategies over the last few years has been to take a lot of rapidly moving content for our public and put it on the blog there so that the website doesn't have to have as much, like here's how to do this thing. Here's this new program. Then here's, look at our pushing people towards that, which is more rapidly, like once a week or so being updated. Which brings us to Troomba. This is the name of the software that provides the calendaring for JMRL. It is under contract, expiring next year in 2027. There are 2 additional 1-year renewals available. The cost for those is locked in. This was it's like a 10-year contract or something. It's like a 5-year contract with a series of 1-year renewals. So it wasn't locked in for 10 years, but this is original pricing. So it's pretty good pricing there. And this is the calendaring and scheduling software that JMRL uses that gets embedded on our website for all the programs that are happening in JMRL. This is what this position that we asked for, Peter, was to enter programs for this. So that's another thing we can talk about is that workflow, right? Like right now, everybody sends everything to Sarah, and a few exceptions, but for the most part, it goes in under her watch. At any rate, it's not perfect. We've talked about some of the issues with it in the past. So I think JMRL is very interested in looking to see what's on the market there. And this may also mean another meeting room booking thing that might come.
Not to derail us, but going back to that earlier point, that's the sort of thing that it just seems like there should be some way within the budget to get that kind of help.
Agreed. Yeah.
And earlier you said, I think, let me make sure I understand your earlier comment. I think you said that MRBS and Troomba functionalities combined together in other offerings.
A lot of the products on the market for this do both those things.
Yeah. Okay.
So they book the meeting room for public use, and then they also do your calendaring for programming because they go hand in hand.
And I guess it's a good point to bring up this issue, which is also on my mind, is this kind of, I look at, this list, right? There are commercial products, and then there's open source. And right, this is a case where those are split because one's open source, one's a product, mm-hmm. Right? And, as we talk about the web strategy roadmap and, as we're sort of drawn conversations about particular tools, it seems like a higher level strategic conversation could be had around the pros and cons of products versus open source for the library. And that, I'm sure there's a lot of, there's a lot of details and opinions and perspectives on that would be worth just to kind of get a sense of, right, because I just know enough to know it's not like simple, right? Like, you could sort of be, oh, well, you get a vendor and they'll fix everything. And it's like, well,
Neither one is.
okay, they might not. And like, right, you're giving up a lot of control, right? And depending on how competitive the marketplace is, you could be really stuck if they start to hike prices and so forth. And so kind of understanding, the marketplace is part of,
Right.
if just because one vendor's been good to you for the last few years doesn't mean they always will be. And
we've seen that. I mean, we went through a host that changed.
That's why we changed, that's why we moved hosting and stuff
Yeah.
like that. I do have to say, just one thing that weighs on the pros of both MRBS and Trumba is both of those. Now, MRBS is just, it's open source, it's crowdsourced in terms of, the developers who made it still support it and still put out new releases with fixes and bugs. They are super responsive. If I write to the listserv for that, they are very fast to respond. Trumba support, incredibly fast to respond. They answered a question for me today and I gave them a bug and they said, great, we're happy to fix this. So, I mean, that's something else to weigh in on, is that there may be other solutions that function better, but then you don't hear back from them for days, or, you just don't have that dialogue.
That's a layer of complexity to what you're talking about, Peter. Like, one of those is open source, one of those is paid. They both have pretty good support, but we've also seen open source where it's like somebody made it 10 years ago and nobody's touched it since, and there is no,
Right.
We've seen some paid products where there's a black hole of support.
I mean, in evaluating these tools and moving towards them, that is part of that evaluation is what can we.
Speaking about the market, we're also talking about our own budget here. And there is no, to Mike's point earlier about the operational costs of adding staff, the ongoing operational costs. Well, it used to be that, okay, well, we can buy this software for the one-time cost, and then, that's cheaper than hiring somebody, and that world is gone. It's all services to software. So we are locked into procurement rules. We have to follow the city of Charlottesville's procurement rules. They are our official fiscal agent and buying partner. And generally, that means that if something costs, I'm going to massacre these numbers. So this is my last understanding of it. And Jerry's not here to correct me, but I believe if something costs more than $20,000, then it has to be cooperatively competed. We have to go through a process where we're either doing a request for a quotation where we take the lowest bid, or we're taking a request for bid where it's like the central library renovation is that. Like, here are all the things that we want, and we come up with a matrix and decide which ones is the best. So the bigger, if we moved away from some of these, like the MRBS, we might be looking at that process again, depending on what the price points are for these softwares. If they're like $500 a year, then it's fine. We can look at the budget and make choices. But if it's going to be, like the Google one is $11,000 a year, that's not. And the argument that procurement would make, and they're right, is you can't just say like, oh, that's 1 year. If you lock into a contract for 5 years, then you've committed $50,000 of the public's money, and you have to be accountable for it. Anyway, just another, talking about the market, another factor to consider there.
And then there's security and privacy too.
Well, security definitely for me is one of the reasons to talk about. Well, I don't know where I would fall on the open source versus software as a service. I think it kind of depends on the individual thing that we're looking at, but security is one of the biggest reasons that, I can feel comfortable at night saying that we have outsourced some of that, whether that's wise or not, I don't know. Like, our patron database right now is the most valuable thing we have, and we're outsourcing the security for that to innovative interfaces. We've done our due diligence, and it's as secure as anything is going to be, but it's not the same as it's an server that's in the back of Fred's office. Right? We don't want to plug everything. Okay, just two more of these, and then we'll look at that timeline. So the other one is the intranet itself, which is a Google Work site. And this is the most important staff tool that we have that Sarah built up from scratch she and Kayla worked on it from the other intranet that we have. So the board has access to it. You're familiar with it. This is just, a web offering that JMRL uses. Currently, it's tied in as part of our Google Workspace, which is intrinsically part of the workflow that we're using at this point at JMRL. So that would only necessarily need to change if the decision were made down the road to move to some other workspace environment like Microsoft 365 or whatever else is on the market. Like Austin was Microsoft, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Different solutions out there. And finally, there's Civilpedia, which is not an afterthought, but it's the last one on the list here. And if we're prioritizing things, this is not it's not a direct, JMRL owns this asset now, but we're not currently doing much with it other than making it available for the public. It is out there. We did this in partnership with the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society 2 years ago when Cedal Tomorrow was looking to offload this asset. We didn't want to see it disappear, so JMRL took over ownership of it, and we're paying for a hosting for that right now. And there's some small amount of Sarah's time, very small, that's taken with like account creation or looking at issues that are there, but we're not currently doing any major developing of it or programming. I'd like to see that down the road. It's a valuable asset, but right now it's just here as part of this overall. Here's what we're offering. Okay. So let's look at that's $265 annually. So we've kind of broken these up into 4 different categories here. And looking out over the next 5 years, there's the evaluation of tools, there's the ongoing refinement needed, there's maintenance needed, then there's market review that's needed. We'll just start at the top here. So we're coming close to the end of 26 already somehow. And for evaluations, we'd like to begin evaluation of the calendaring program tool. So you saw next February, we're going to be up for Trumba. We have a fallback plan there. We can continue to use that for 2 more years. It's part of a contract that we have access to. But I think that there has been enough movement from staff interested in finding a better tool there that we at least go out and see what's on the market. So that probably means a procurement process, even if in the end we decide to stick with what's there. The only concern here is that has to interface with whatever we end up using for the overall look and feel web page. I don't think that would be a problem. That's what they do. Trumba at least. And then into 28 for the catalog discovery layer. So again, we're looking at the next year or 2 with what we have, unless we reach some sort of crisis point there. Something fails beyond our ability to repair, or some new service doesn't work because it doesn't interface with this that we're not aware of at this point. And then 2030 website CMS. Look at the whole thing. Like, do we need a new content management system? Doesn't mean that we're not tweaking any of the offerings or the way that it looks between now and then. It just means before we say, let's go do this thing again, fresh, we're looking at 2030. Again, roadmap. Up for discussion.
Put it on my calendar.
I'll still be here. Internet website content, so ongoing refinements there. So, kind of to the point there that it's not a redoing the whole thing, but it's all the work that needs to happen on a regular basis to keep providing the content that we're providing. Staff procedures and use of tools, that was the Sarah thing. I think that's a little bit tied in with what you were talking about, Peter, in terms of like working on our own workflow and making sure that our own staff has the comfort level to maybe help out on some of these facets. The big one here is under maintenance, this Drupal 10 upgrade, which needs to happen by this summer sometime.
Our host has not given us a hard, fast deadline, but we are on an old version of PHP, which will be retired. It is deprecated for security support. So something like very similar MRBS needs to be upgraded for PHP by the end of April this year. So I'm having to do some structure changes for MRBS because our host wants to stay secure. They are upgrading, and then I have to upgrade everything to live in that environment. Drupal is one of those things. The last I heard was probably the end of 2026 is when they're going to give a hard, fast deadline. But they may move that. I mean, Drupal's a big product. A lot of people are on older versions of it. So it's a pretty big jump to go from the version we are on now, which is 8, to 9. From 9 to 10 is a lot smoother from what I've read. But it's a big code change to go from 8 to 9.
So we're gonna do 8 to 9, then to 10. We're gonna do that 9 to 10 right after.
Well, I don't know if we can just go, if we have to go through 8 to 9, or if we can just go from 8 to 10. I do not know that yet. So part of this process is I have to do research, and I mean, it's just focused time, which I have hit or miss.
I said.
Yeah.
You'll see at the end here that domain renewal, that might actually get kicked up a little bit. We've been talking about a bill that was at the State House. It didn't make it through this year, but it's still in, it's confusing how bills go through the state, but it's in some sort of committee work. That means it could possibly come back next year that would require local government entities to have a .gov domain. It wasn't fully fleshed out, but that could happen next year, and we would have to move everything to .gov, which is, it would be a project, but not the end of the world, I think.
I wonder if you'd be allowed to have a dual, both things point at the same place.
I think that's what we had talked about, like have it by the .gov. You can't just buy .gov on a domain sales. You have to prove that you're a government entity. So I'm reasonably secure no one's going to camp on JMRL.gov, but
yeah. But I'm just saying, if you have to support will the law be that you just have to support JMRL.gov, and then JMRL could just keep working the same way for
It
everyone?
would be a lot less work to
Yeah.
just point JMRL.gov to go to JMRL.org.
Right.
Switching everything would take, it's a project. It would take
So,
some steps. It's like changing
it'd be
IP.
on the workspace end too.
Yeah.
All of our email addresses also need.
Yeah, it would be.
This may or may not happen on that timeline, but it's something that I wasn't aware of 2 months ago that, we're going to have to.
All your printed literature too.
Unless it can stay.
Right, yeah.
Actually, that's probably like. Yeah, I don't know. I have to look at the letter of the law. Okay, and then marketing review, go ahead.
I was interested in the next two. I'm not sure. So Drupal 10, I heard about, but I wasn't clear what the difference between that and Drupal structure is.
Just our overall structure of how our content is built out in Drupal could really use some improving. Some of the ways that it was built out initially, not the best solution for long-term support. I've done some of that cleanup, but it would help for maintenance purposes to improve that. It kind of would go hand in hand with the upgrade, but not necessarily. I mean, I can do some of it now and some of it after.
Okay.
And then blog theme and structure.
The blog theme is deprecated, and I have a new theme to build out the blog to be more, to look and feel and work more within the main site. Just haven't had the time. So it too needs to be fleshed out.
I see. So that's the word, that's not the main website. It's the WordPress blog.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay. And then, well, I'll ask this after your next section.
Yeah, so, and then the JMRL branding review is in line with what's in the strategic plan for the brand review. It's 2028. We did do an update of the style manual this past year that Dylan did, but it was mostly like a haircut around it. It was kind of, the intention really was to give guidance to staff who are now using Canva. It's a free tool for graphic design that a lot of staff have access to. They didn't when this was first written. So it was just to incorporate some language about like how to properly use that, and then clean up some of the like messaging things that are in there. So that's on our internet and available for everyone, but it's not the same as an overall brand update, which at this point these colors are working, right? I like them. They're better than the original one. The language is okay. But it's time for, there will be time here for fresh set of eyes looking at JMRL's brand.
So then it seems to me that there's another opportunity within the existing brand, regardless of whether we change it down the road in 2029, to review the current website's front page look and feel. We talked about, a more visual approach. There's all sorts of things you could do. Is that something that we have planned to look at in some sort of concrete or time boxed way?
Yeah, to me, that falls under the ongoing refinement of the internet and website content. I don't have, so that's like, that could probably stretch over all 5 of these years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm making a distinction between sort of I feel like ongoing refinement is sort of very iterative, as opposed to, hey, let's sit down with this with a pair of eyes, and if we were drawing it from Greenfield, what might it look like? And then, oh, we got some good ideas out of that. How can we bridge the gap? I feel like that's worth in the same way that overall JMRL brand or the CMS review, I feel like that's worth its own, what do you call these boxes, somewhere.
So like a brand.
Design, I would call it the design.
A review of sorts.
Design review. I think that should happen. Again, it doesn't have to be every year, every 6 months, but I think with some regularity, less than a decade, that should probably happen in a sort of a formal, take 30,000 foot kind of take a couple steps back and look at it with fresh eyes.
Yeah, I mean, the last time we did that in a major way was when we moved to the current website. We went through 2 outside agencies that we contracted to do it. We did public testing, staff testing, and things like that. So something on that scale, maybe not, but maybe there's a smaller scale, like just.
I think when I was putting out these evaluations, that goes hand in hand with the CMS, because how the content is delivered is,
Agree that
form and function.
Agree that you'll have to.
And usually a website needs that sort of evaluation and facelift, reevaluation at 10 years on the outside. So, I mean, JMRL was the website was given a facelift and kind of cleaned up around 2011 or 2012, and then around 2021.
That might change depending on the outcome of this branding.
Sure. I mean,
too.
yeah. I mean, these things are kind of go hand in hand. But I coming from a web development background, when I worked at a company that did it, contracted it out, we made CMS decision along with the website design. It was a whole project itself. So designed the content, how to structure the content, and then how to deliver and surface.
I could support some sort of midterm review though, because not just for the look of it, which I know is your main concern, but also like as we're getting into discussions about a new CMS or the new brand or whatnot, like the content things that we can address short term. So yeah, we'll talk about.
You might expose things that, hey, we wish we could do this, but the current system doesn't, and that might feed in to a decision, or vice versa. Yeah, I mean, I would not agree that. So part of what I would claim is that the look and feel of sites on the internet broadly that people are used to and are clicking on, that kind of from an audience expectation standpoint, I think that changes more frequently than every 10 years. I think
and I'm saying on the outside. I mean, so that's depending on what kind of site. If it's a brochure site, if you're a marketing sort of piece, or if it's a more institutional piece, they tend to stretch out further. Also, it's about our staffing or the support for it. So.
Yeah. I think that there's a world here in which we, go like a process similar, we identify some money within the next few years, we go back to a local agency and like, hey, take a look at what we have and, here are the things that we're interested in some feedback on, and whether we can do something about it depends on wherever we are at that.
And how complicated it is.
Yeah, whether or not it's a whole thing or if it's just like
I just think it's worth thinking about it in some formal and concrete way every, probably 5 years, if I was throwing a dart at something.
Like I said, so my expectation is that this committee will meet one more time to review a draft of this before I present it to the full board as here's my deliverable for 2020, for fiscal year 2026.
So my other piece of feedback on this, I think, again, this is great. It'd be nice if there's some visual way to show which are must do within some time frame and which are, hey, we think this is a kind of a good.
I think I got that note from earlier about like prioritization.
Yeah.
Well,
I did lay this out. I did kind of, it's not represented here, but that was part of my metric about where and how to put these things. Like I put MRBS upgrade and Drupal 10 upgrade, because I know that
it has to happen.
or do die.
I'm just saying, so my comment now is more about the timeline rather than the priority, David. It's like the timeline, as she's saying, has to happen at this point. I don't know if there's a little badge you can put, or I don't know.
The staff procedures and use of tools are for things similar to Canva, where, how to kind of get staff to produce better content and
dovetail into our final conversation.
True. But also, the different tools that we do have available and supporting some of that documentation and stuff like that. That's what that is.
I think of a way to succinctly capture that.
Yeah.
I do think that I feel like a chart like this, scheduling kind of thing, it can only really, because we're looking at it over a period of several years. It's really more of kind of aspirational, assuming all things remain kind of as they are, right? Like the urgency is going to skyrocket if something goes wrong with one of these things, right? Like, like I think you mentioned like the CMS, right? Like something could change and that could be, have to be dealt with earlier. So I'm just, I wouldn't go too far to trying to say like what's urgent as of this minute, because that could change 6 months from now.
Well, this is it'll be a staff level document, so it changes, it needs to change as long as the board is kept informed.
Yeah. So from my perspective, this is a great, move forward in terms of a tool that can just help the board understand the rough timeline of things and to kind of know like, okay, like, next year we're going to be able to talk about, the branding or what have you.
So other thoughts?
These are fiscal years or calendar years?
These are calendar.
Yeah. Because you said at one point you said almost at the end of 2026, which is not.
Well,
and then I thought, it must be.
It's only March.
Kind of fiscal.
Currently, I'm living in the 2025 2026 budget year, and then next year's 2027. So don't ask me what that.
It's almost Christmas.
Well, let me think about that too, because it might make more sense for the board to lay this out in fiscal years.
I have such a hard time.
That's how the board thinks about the year. That's how I think about the year.
Right.
I think about what day is it. So I was glad to hear that from my own perspective, it's not.
Yeah, and some of this is kind of, I was also trying to lay out, we absolutely know that we have a contract dealing with our calendar.
Yes.
As period, and that's calendar year. And I absolutely know that, the Drupal 10 and the MRBS are within the calendar year, because that's how our host is kind of addressed.
I don't care what our fiscal year.
Yeah. Who knows whose fiscal is what.
So in terms of this output, Peter, the board asked, so this is thank you, Sarah, for a lot of work on this. But this is my goal to present to the board, and my evaluation is in May. So I would like to have something to give to the board before May. Can we commit to this group meeting either at the end of April or beginning of May and review, take some of these notes and get it done? Any other hopes, dreams, aspirations related to this? Okay. I'm gonna stop sharing that. Martha never hopped on, I think. Can I move on, Peter, to my last unagenda item here? It was just timing, basically, because this group was meeting today, is going to meet quarterly. And we have been talking internally, you know, obviously everybody in the world's been talking about AI for many years now, but it's become increasingly apparent to me in the last few months that I need to provide better guidance to the library staff on use of AI, and then also make sure that they are comfortable in talking about it, that they can provide service to our patrons that are going to have an expectation about, similar to, I use this analogy and got killed for it, but it's the same as when everybody's parents got their first Kindle. You know, they all came to the library like, help me, how do I use this thing? How does it work? This first smartphones, how do I use this thing? How does it work? First time we got wired in Apple IIe computers, you know, how do I use this thing? How does it work? People are already coming to the library asking for that. I want to make sure that our staff know what it is that where they should be going to get tools to teach the public about it, how they should be talking about it, and then what tools we want to use organizationally. Because right now what we've got is we've got an AI working group that was a homegrown staff-led initiative that Fred just came from a meeting that they had at 2:00, right? So this is mostly our staff talking about their experiences, reviewing some literature together, thinking about what a procedure would look like. But it hasn't come with a lot of top-down direction about like what should we do here. I think our staff are using AI, they're adopting it, but they're using tools without any guidance from the organization. So somebody might be using ChatGPT, somebody might be paying for access to ChatGPT, somebody's using Claude, somebody's using Gemini. We have access to Gemini through Google Workspace, but it's limited at our price point, basically. So the library needs to make some decisions about what to tell staff. Is this a policy question for the policy committee to look at? I wouldn't want it to get that level of prescriptive, like use this tool and we're going to pay for this thing, you know.
I think where policy might have a role to enter into it is setting high-level guidelines. Like you don't send patron information to the cloud.
Yeah.
That would, you know, we'd have to think and research what those types, but that would be the character of anything at a policy level, the way I would think about it.
And Fred shared a very good one that I just briefly reviewed, but it was from Wisconsin.
Yeah, and there's like a couple of the AI committee has been looking at, but
looking at specific policies.
yeah.
So
This is what I heard at ALA this year that I really liked.
you saw that.
Oh no, it was sort of like I used to work at a Wisconsin library, so it's like more like a
Networking thing.
yeah. Sorry.
I think that the other thing that is going on in my mind right now is that we're also starting a staff procedures working group that's going to work opposite the policy committee. So the policy committee meets every other month. There's going to be a procedures working group that meets every other month. It's starting at the bottom, the top, I should say, of the procedural manual and updates things that haven't been updated in years. So every policy that the board's looking at, there should be an associated procedure. We've done some of those in the last few years, maybe not every single one, but the ones that staff have to work on, like Safe Child. The board passed a new Safe Child policy, so there's a new Safe Child procedure, things like that. And it occurs to me that group might also be involved in this. So I guess I'm just bringing it up today because this is the board's technology committee, and this is probably the biggest technology question that we're going to be facing for the next several months.
So I'm curious about the categories that AI is being used for or could be used for. Like it seems like, you know, the most, right? So the one is just for doing research, right? So it's, you know, kind of like where you would search Google to try to figure out something out. Now you might search Claude or whatever, and right, and that I imagine is happening, right? The staff are doing that just to kind of look stuff up, try to solve problems.
Potentially without any direction of how to what to use and how to do it.
And then patrons are doing it and may need help better. Right, so there's that category, which, then there's, right, as staff have to create documents, are they, they sort of using it to create the documents, and are there any concerns around that, or things that people need to learn, or, then there's the more like, right, like the reinvention of how work happens, which is a much deeper issue. So those are the three that sort of pop to my mind of like,
Yeah, I guess if in that third one you would include, or maybe it's a separate category, kind of planning at all levels of the organization, like strategic thinking, so not just me and the board thinking about policy or a 5-year plan or whatnot, but somebody being like, okay, well, it's going to be summer, we're going to do children's programming around, the dinosaur theme this year. Like, hey, AI, like what should I be doing here? Or what, we have these resources, we have these things. I think people are using it to help kind of brainstorm.
That, to me, that fits in kind of in between the first and the second one I mentioned. It's
I
partly,
use the word ideation for that as a category.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that could be its own category.
yeah.
So I think
But
that
it's not the third one I mentioned at all. So then I would say there's research, there's writing, then there's ideation. Those are all things that staff and patrons may be doing and could use help with. So then now the fourth category is the one that's more like, can AI do parts of people's jobs?
Well, I would use the word tool somewhere. AI is a tool, like the spreadsheet is. Yeah, but I'm just trying to get a little closer to articulating. I'm on the page with you.
With the fourth one, right, then you could look across all the different categories of work, right? It's like the area that's been the most progress so far has been AI kind of changing how coding works, right? But there's certainly a lot of hype right now. It's hard to know how much of it's going to end up being real, that it's going to have similar effects on lots of other job categories. And so that is, I don't know if that is on your radar of when you brought this issue up, but
it wasn't at the forefront of my radar. I mean, yeah, I'm aware, and I have the same,
Well, I'll put it this way, from my own perspective, one question I had coming into this meeting is what staff development are we offering right now for someone like Sarah to use AI assisted coding to help her deal with the workload. It's a double-edged sword. There's ways in which it can be net negative, but if you use it the right way, that's very much the industry where the industry is far along the path already.
The amount of original coding that we have to write, like, correct me if I'm wrong here, it's not a tremendous amount of we're developing our own code.
Well, I have used it. In fact, it was Kayla who kind of started it, but I have used it as an example to pull the data, to use a Google API to pull the data out of our user directory to make a staff directory. That had to be, it's not complex code, but it's beyond my skill set.
Right.
So I did use.
So you wrote a script, basically.
Yeah. I needed a script. I needed the HTML page. I needed the CSS for it. I did use an AI to write that. And when I would feedback the code because something wasn't working how I expected, and I said I need it to do X, Y, and Z, it said, wow, this code needs to be rewritten. It's not good. It did that numerous times. It would 5 minutes later tell me how its code was not up to snuff.
I think it's a great example.
So, I mean, it does work, and it's doing some things I want. There are more things I would love to refine with it, but it takes time to do because you need to ask the right questions. You need to format the right expectations, and then test and develop and that sort of thing. So it is a collaborative. It's using it as a tool.
Also, caution that most ethical AI frameworks are built so that there's a human subject matter expert in the loop.
yes.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna be able to get away from that human subject matter expert at the public library. If we do, I think we're probably not offering public library anymore.
But no, it's just like, it's like something that we struggle with is like having enough technical.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to bring to this part of the conversation is I have some experience with this. There are definite skills to using it effectively, and you're tried it on your own. This is what it sounds like to me, which is great. But if we have professional development to get up that learning curve, I think there would be value. There could be value to the organization.
So I think that the organization would certainly earmark resources for professional development in that way.
Yeah.
But I don't have, like right now, you know, Sarah's a 101 for her position. And even if it's Sarah and Jeremy and Fred, the folks in this group sending them, what is that PD?
Say it again.
What is the PD? Like, where are we going to say, like,
Right.
we're running a public library and we need this? I think that's coming. It just hasn't really been there. We're starting to see a lot more like, okay, like, you know, using AI in public library programming, using it in offering public programming, not coding.
I would say that you don't want someone to develop, and I have seen some of these actually in the
BLA
things
stuff.
that I get all the time.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily want a public library focused thing. These are just tasks that are happening in the public library domain. So you need to just understand how to use these tools for the tasks. And I totally agree that this is a category that we should be thinking about and exploring. And just my perspective that I'm bringing is the tools can be really useful. And today they're the worst they're ever going to be is a phrase that we use. But there is a skill. There's a learning curve. So I think that we should think about how to benefit from that. Yeah. I mean, the short answer though is what's the professional development? You would just research. Here's my task, and how do I, how can AI help me, and then who can teach me that?
Libraries.
No, but you break it down.
That's fair.
Your job description, as the executor of the library system, has a bunch of bullet points involved. Well, there's also functional tasks that you. Anyways, we're on.
Well, I think that so this is a useful conversation.
Yeah, I'm just kind of opening the door right now. But this is something that was on my mind, certainly by the intersection of we're talking about stuff that needs to happen with our limited tech resources, and let's start talking about thinking about how we're going to use AI. I just know that these tools are useful if you can harness them properly.
So is this a discussion worth having at the policy committee level? Is the tech committee going to recommend to the board to recommend to the policy committee?
I think the bottom line, no matter whatever path, the bottom line is, and it's just me again, identify the tasks, identify how AI can actually help, and then whatever committee you're talking about will have some information to work from. If you just say right now AI, it's all over the map. Like, what does that mean to people?
I think that makes a lot of sense because someone might be really pro using image detection to detect cancer, but be against a chatbot and or be giving them the right choices.
So to me, that sounds like, coming up with at least a framework for procedure, and there's some discussion from the working group about already looking at some procedures.
In the next 12.
In the next 12 weeks, which is a reasonable time frame that jives with the creation of this other working group, and kind of work in parallel on that. And then potentially sharing that with the policy committee to say, like, are there board level decisions that need to overlap this, or is this good enough?
Yeah, I would frame it as put some thought by this working group into what are the opportunities where we have tasks and a possible match with.
There's some of that. I also have, like the concern about like feeding patron information or anything like that. There are also some guardrails, right?
Right. Yeah, you have to.
And I do want to disclose that a large percentage of this working group is working on like drafting patron materials.
Like finding aids type thing.
So it's that from like Nelson, Green, Scottsville, Northside, Gordon, like they're all like helping to make like and like having this like sort of like almost like base level, like what are we talking about conversation, or like because so much of what we do is help people with bridging those digital literacy skills, like kind of addressing those like patrons that we see every day side of things, less than the procedure
Yeah.
side of things. And so also we want to be like,
And I support that, and we would support doing that on a regional level, but that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be happening at a local level now, because like the needs of each branch might be, like Scottsville might be getting, I don't know, probably not Scottsville. Like some branches might be getting questions every day that something like that needs to happen quicker than overall, here's the thing. So I would like to see them.
It also might be an interesting area just to explore the possibility of having one or more interns, right? Because I'm sure there's students at UVA or whatever that have just gone crazy, like, and really are cutting edge. And, if it could actually be really fun if you're able to kind of, give them a sandbox that's like safe, like, that it's like, see what you could do and then show us how you did it. It could be a really fun way to learn.
And I think the pitch to those potential candidates is we can give you the opportunity to work in the sandbox with a real world situation.
Exactly.
Because that's something that if you're watching YouTube videos and trying to do it on your own, you don't necessarily have that real world use case or data set to work with.
Yeah.
I have a question that like that's an issue that we've run into with like interns before, just in the library environment of like that, like whether or not we like allow them access to like, and sometimes people have done internships here where they haven't been given access
Especially
to
in this case where we wouldn't allow the data to be set up to a cloud-based AI.
But it could even be things like, right, like, what would be some ways that with this tool set, it could be, could you do something cool with Trumba, right? It wouldn't require patient data.
Right, that's public information anyways.
But
If you access Trumba, you can access patron personal information. So we talked about this before in terms of trying to offload some of this day-to-day data entry stuff that I do now, to give it to a volunteer or something. But it's patron data. So there's not much that I access or that we have that doesn't touch on personal information. I mean, that's where
be a job to figure out how to.
yeah, that's where it gets a little sticky that way. So
I'm searching for, I swear I got something from one of our jurisdictional partners that was working with a class at UVA that was offering something very similar to that.
There was like a summer program for small businesses to sign up to have classes of students work on an AI project. I could send you the email again. I forwarded it to a friend of mine because he was interested in it.
I think that the thing there, right, is like the library then narrowing the scope of like, well, what's most useful, in terms of that chart or in terms of other programs and services, like, great. I'm happy to have the help. We just need to focus on what is it that we would want the outcome to be.
it's interesting because, right, like, just based on my very limited understanding of kind of what AI is enabling and so forth, right? It's raising interesting questions of, right, going back to the open source versus, third-party software. It's in some cases it's making things easier to do where the enterprise will say, we're going to do this ourselves now because we can use AI to do this. We're going to get rid of this third-party software. We're going to save $1 million a year or whatever.
Right.
And so it's changing the landscape of what organizations are going to choose to do in-house versus outsource. And it's not entirely predictable which ways those things are going to go, but JMRL needs to be learning that, like, as it's happening.
Another factor along those lines is if you have an open source platform, you can read the code and do stuff with it, whereas it's closed source, you don't have that opportunity. And when the cost of making your customizations goes down because you're able to automate, let's put some weight on the side of the open source. It's just, again, I'm not saying it's a deterministic thing, it's case by case, but it's changing the cost benefit for that decision.
And one of the things that I think I would like throw into the mix is that you're going to run into the same problem with maintenance. I think that while these like AI summer programs are exciting, they remind me a lot of like the app summer programs that a lot of companies bought into, and then they realized that someone had to maintain the pizza buying
Yeah,
app.
right.
But I think one thing I took from Peter's suggestion was even if you don't use it going forward, we've explored something and learned from where there's potential value here, because this class was able to do.
Part of it may end up being useful for you, David, because, right, I mean, right now in the business world, right, there's all this hype around, we just laid off 40% of our staff because of AI, right? That's gonna find its way
Trickle down, right?
eventually to pressure on the library, and it's better to be in a position where you can push back, right, with understand, like, we've played with that, it doesn't work, and here's why.
Our note taker has a hard out. This is a great conversation. But Sierra has to leave, and I think that the guidance that I was looking for from this group is here. I think what we're going to do is take some of this back and work it into at least a draft of a procedure for staff, and then I might bring it back to the tech committee for some input, and then we can decide at that point whether or not the tech committee would recommend to the board that, hey, we need a board level policy. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, you've outlined some territory. I'm not sure how to tackle the territory, but it all needs to be thought through.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that you guys approached it from like a training perspective. I think that's really fun.
Yeah. I expect all staff training today to be AI heavy. Maybe we'll have a virtual one.
I think there's network.
What?
Never mind.
Okay. Well, Peter, anything else you want to cover?
I don't think so, so we'll kind of work out the next meeting date pretty soon.
Yeah, so I just wrote down sometime at the end of April, beginning of May. Yeah. So like 6 weeks. 2 months.
All right, everyone okay with adjourning? Thanks, everyone. We're adjourned.
Thank you all.